Maya Rodriguez stood all of 4 feet 11 inches in her worn maintenance coveralls, which made her roughly the size of a particularly enthusiastic house cat compared to the rest of the crew aboard the cargo vessel Prosperity's Edge. Not that anyone bothered to remember her actual height, mind you. Most of the alien crew had settled on describing her as Tiny Human, or the Little One, or, when they were feeling particularly creative, that small pink thing that fixes stuff. Captain Vortak, a 7-foot-tall, lizard-like saurian who took great pride in his impressive frilled neck display, had a habit of patting Maya on the head whenever she delivered her engineering reports. Today was no exception. "Ah, little Maya," Vortak rumbled in his bass voice that sounded like gravel in a cement mixer. "I have very important job for you." He gestured dramatically with one clawed hand. "The waste recycling unit in Section 7 needs cleaning. Perfect-size job for perfect-size crew member, yes?" Maya looked up at him with the kind of patient smile usually reserved for explaining basic concepts to particularly slow children. "Captain, I have 3 engineering degrees from Earth Technical Institute, and I designed the navigation upgrades we installed last month. Maybe I could help with something a bit more challenging." Vortax's frills fluttered with what Maya had learned was his version of laughter. "Very funny, little one. But big important ship work is for big important crew. You stick to small jobs, stay safe, yes?" Across the bridge, Engineer Bloom frapped 2 of his 6 tentacles around his control console in what Maya recognized as his nervous gesture. The purple, jellyfish-like alien had been aboard for 3 years and still jumped whenever Maya entered a room. "Perhaps," he suggested in his high, warbling voice, "the human could assist with the routine maintenance schedules. Nothing too complicated, of course." Security Chief Crom clicked his mandibles dismissively. The insectoid alien stood nearly 8 feet tall when he wasn't hunched over his tactical displays, and his exoskeleton gleamed with the kind of polish that screamed, "I take myself very seriously." "The human is not trained for security protocols," he buzzed through his translator. "She should remain in safe areas. Humans are fragile." Maya's smile never wavered, though something flickered behind her dark eyes that would have made a smarter species pause. "Right, fragile. I'll just go fix that waste recycler then, shall I?" She turned to leave and Vortak called after her cheerfully, "Don't forget safety harness, little Maya. We don't want you floating away if artificial gravity fails." As the bridge door slid shut behind her, Maya Rodriguez, former Earth military special operations engineer, began walking towards Section 7 with the kind of purposeful stride that her old drill sergeant would have recognized immediately. The same stride she'd used walking through 3 different war zones before she'd decided civilian life might be more peaceful. The universe, as it turned out, had a sense of humor about these things. Maya was elbow-deep in the waste recycling unit, humming an old Earth song about taking someone to the danger zone, when the ship's emergency klaxons started wailing like a dying space whale. She pulled her head out of the machinery, just as Captain Vortak's voice boomed through the comm system. "All crew to stations. We have received distress signal from luxury liner Golden Horizon. They are under attack by pirate fleet. We will investigate." Maya wiped her hands on her coveralls and made her way to the bridge, where she found the crew in various states of panic. Well, what passed for panic among aliens who prided themselves on being more evolved than primitive species like humans. "Captain," Bloomf warbled, his tentacles writhing anxiously around his sensor array. "I'm detecting 15 vessels in the Crimson Swarm formation. This is Draktor's fleet." Crom's mandibles clicked rapidly, which Maya had learned was his equivalent of sweating. "Draktor the Merciless has never been captured. His crew has sacked 47 vessels in the past cycle alone." Yes, Vortak said, his frills extending in what Maya was pretty sure was supposed to look confident but mostly just looked like a nervous gecko. "But think of salvage opportunities. Golden Horizon is luxury liner, very expensive cargo. We help passengers, collect reward, everyone wins." Maya cleared her throat. "Captain, I could help with the rescue operation. I have experience with hostile situations and—" No, little Maya," Vortak interrupted, waving a dismissive claw. "You stay here, keep ship running. Much too dangerous for small human. You could get hurt, and who would fix waste recycler?" On the main view screen, they could see the Golden Horizon listing badly, escape pods scattered around it like seeds from a broken fruit. The pirate ships swarmed around the luxury liner like metallic sharks, their weapons systems glowing ominously. "Crom, take security team and prepare for boarding action," Vortak ordered. "We will dock with Golden Horizon and extract passengers." Maya watched the tactical display with growing concern. The pirate formation was textbook perfect, covering all escape routes while maintaining overlapping fields of fire. "Captain, That's a killing field. They're going to— Human stays on bridge. Crom buzzed firmly. Security matter is not for maintenance crew. 20 minutes later, Crom's team was limping back to the Prosperity's edge in their damaged shuttle, half their number injured, and the rest looking like they'd been through a blender. Crom himself was missing 2 of his 6 legs, and kept muttering something about enhanced combat tactics and impossible coordination. "Report," Vortak demanded, his frills now completely flattened against his neck. "The pirates," Crom clicked weakly. "They anticipated our approach vectors. They have military-grade weapons and coordination. This is not random raiding party, Captain. This is organized fleet with tactical superiority." Blumpf's tentacles had gone completely white. "Sensors detect additional ships jumping in system. The pirate fleet is growing." On the view screen, 3 more ships materialized near the golden horizon, their weapons already charging. The luxury liner's distress beacon was growing weaker. "Perhaps," Vortak said slowly, "we should consider strategic withdrawal. Live to fight another day, yes?" Maya looked around the bridge at the dejected alien crew, then at the view screen showing the helpless passenger liner. She stepped forward with that same patient smile she'd worn earlier. "Captain, I really think I could help with this situation. You see, I have some experience with tactical operations that might be relevant here." Vortak barely glanced at her. "Little Maya, this is serious military situation. Very dangerous. You go to quarters. Stay safe while we decide what to do." "I understand your concern," Maya said, her voice taking on a strange, conversational tone that somehow made the bridge feel several degrees colder. "But I think there might be a few things about human capabilities that we haven't really discussed yet." For the first time since Maya had joined the crew, Blumpf's tentacles stopped writhing. In fact, he'd gone completely still, staring at her with all 6 of his eyes. Something in the way she was standing had changed. Maya stood in the center of the bridge with her hands clasped behind her back, and somehow the 4'11" human had become the focal point of the entire room. It was subtle, the kind of shift that prey animals recognize instinctively when a predator enters their territory. "You know," Maya said conversationally, "I've been thinking about this tactical situation, and I have a few observations." Vortak's frills twitched irritably. "Little Maya, please, we have serious crisis. 15 ships in a standard Crimson Swarm formation," Maya continued, as if he hadn't spoken. 3 heavy cruisers, 8 frigates, 4 light attack vessels. They're using a modified Kessler containment pattern with overlapping fire zones and predetermined retreat vectors. The bridge went dead silent, except for the hum of the ship's systems. "The formation assumes their target will attempt either a direct assault or a flanking maneuver," Maya went on, her voice taking on the crisp, analytical tone of someone reading from a technical manual. "It's designed to counter conventional rescue operations by species that follow standard engagement protocols." Blumpf made a small, strangled sound. "How does she know Kessler containment patterns? That's advanced military tactical theory." Maya smiled, and for the first time, it didn't look particularly friendly. "Oh, I know quite a few things about military tactical theory. Earth military special operations tends to be very thorough in their training programs." Captain Vortak's jaw dropped, literally. His mouth opened and stayed that way for several seconds. "Earth military? But you are maintenance engineer." "I'm a maintenance engineer," Maya agreed pleasantly. "I'm also a former demolitions expert, tactical systems analyst, and close-quarters combat specialist. Turns out those skills transfer quite well to fixing broken machinery. Same principles, really. Identify the problem, apply the appropriate solution, achieve desired outcome." Crom's remaining legs started clicking against the deck plating, which Maya had learned was his species' equivalent of a nervous laugh. "But humans are peaceful species. You fix things. You don't break them." "Oh, we're excellent at fixing things," Maya said, and there was something in her tone that made Blumpf's tentacles curl up tight against his body. "We're also remarkably good at breaking things when the situation calls for it. It's all about applying the right tool for the job." She turned to face the tactical display, and the way she moved was different now. Gone was the slightly clumsy, endearing waddle that had made the crew think of her as a harmless pet. This was fluid, controlled, purposeful. "The thing about humans," Maya continued, "is that we're what you might call persistence predators. We don't just hunt for food or territory, we hunt for the intellectual challenge. We hunt because it's interesting." Vortak's frills had gone completely white. "Predators?" "Apex predators," Maya corrected gently. "We didn't climb to the top of Earth's food chain by being cute and cuddly. We did it by being smarter, more adaptable, and significantly more creative than anything else that wanted to eat us." She gestured at the view screen where the pirate fleet maintained their perfect formation. This Draktor fellow is thinking like a conventional military commander. He's established a killing field, locked down the escape routes, and he's waiting for us to make a predictable move so he can respond with overwhelming force. And you have better plan? Vortak asked weakly. Maya's smile returned, but now it had teeth. Captain, I don't think you understand. This isn't a problem that needs solving. This is a puzzle that needs solving. And humans love puzzles. She turned to face the crew, and something had definitely changed behind her dark eyes. They'd gone flat and calculating, the eyes of something that spent a lot of time thinking about how to take things apart. I'm going to need access to the ship's fabrication bay, the weapons systems, and about 30 minutes alone with the maintenance inventory. Also, does anyone know if we have any spare fertilizer in the cargo hold? The bridge was so quiet you could hear the distant hum of the life support systems. Quoth, "Why?" Blumph whispered. "Do you need fertilizer?" Maya's grin widened. Because sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to make it go away very, very quickly. Maya Rodriguez moved through the Prosperity's edge like she owned it, which, considering the way the crew was now following her around at what they clearly considered a safe distance, she basically did. Captain Vortak had handed over access codes to every system on the ship with the kind of nervous enthusiasm usually reserved for defusing unexploded ordnance. First things first, Maya announced, pulling up the ship's schematics on her tablet. We need to understand what we're working with here. This is a Class Key cargo hauler, designed for maximum storage capacity and fuel efficiency, not exactly built for combat. She tapped the screen, highlighting various sections of the ship. But the beautiful thing about cargo haulers is that they're designed to carry anything, which means they have excellent power distribution systems and modular attachment points. Very flexible platform. Plum's tentacles were doing that nervous writhing thing again. You want to turn cargo ship into warship. That violates 17 different safety regulations. 18, actually, Maya corrected cheerfully. I'm planning to violate the regulation about improvised weapons systems, too. But don't worry, I'll make sure everything is properly labeled. She led them into the fabrication bay, where the ship's industrial-grade 3D printers hummed quietly. Maya started pulling up manufacturing templates on the main console with the kind of casual efficiency that suggested she'd done this before. The thing about humans, she said conversationally while her fingers danced across the control interface, is that we have this wonderful evolutionary trait called improvisation. Most species develop tools for specific purposes. Humans develop tools that can be used for multiple purposes. What are you making? Crom asked, his voice carrying a note of fascination that probably should have worried him. Mining charges, Maya replied, as if this was the most normal thing in the world. Technically, they're for breaking up asteroids, but chemistry doesn't really care about your intentions. An explosion is an explosion. The fabrication unit started producing small cylindrical devices that looked disturbingly professional. Maya picked one up and examined it with the kind of casual familiarity that made Captain Vortak's frills twitch. These are lovely, she said approvingly. Clean, burning, shaped charges with programmable timers. The Prosperity's Edge has really excellent fabrication capabilities. Much better than the field equipment I used to work with. Field equipment? Vortak asked weakly. Oh yes, I spent 3 years in the Proxima campaign. Lovely little war, very educational. Taught me all sorts of interesting things about creative problem-solving under pressure. Maya moved to the next station, where she began assembling what looked like a very large, very complicated gun. The crew watched in horrified fascination as she welded together components with the kind of precision that suggested extensive practice. This is a railgun, she explained, not looking up from her work. Accelerates projectiles using electromagnetic fields instead of chemical propellants. Much more efficient, and you can use almost anything as ammunition. Scrap metal, spare parts, frozen waste from the recycling system. Very environmentally friendly. You're making weapons from garbage, Blumph squeaked. I'm making weapons from available materials, Maya corrected. The garbage part is just a happy coincidence. Humans are excellent at working with what they have rather than what they want. It's called adaptive resourcefulness, and it's why we're so good at surviving in hostile environments. She attached the railgun to a mounting system that looked like it had been designed to hold cargo containers. The wonderful thing about modular design is that everything is interchangeable if you're creative enough about it. Captain Vortak was staring at the growing arsenal with the kind of expression usually reserved for natural disasters. How do you know all this, little Maya? Maya paused in her work and looked up at him with that patient smile. Well, before I became a maintenance engineer, I was a combat engineer. Before that, I was a demolition specialist. Before that, I was a tactical systems analyst. And before that, I was a very curious little girl who liked taking things apart to see how they worked. And you decided to become maintenance engineer because I got tired of taking things apart and wanted to try putting them back together for a change. Seemed like a nice, peaceful way to use my skills. She gestured at the improvised weapons surrounding them. Of course, sometimes peaceful doesn't work out exactly as planned. Maya moved to the final station, where she began mixing chemicals from the ship's supply stores. The combination of her casual demeanor and the fact that she was creating what appeared to be military-grade explosives was giving the crew a collective case of the nervous twitches. The thing about humans, she continued conversationally, is that we're what evolutionary biologists call persistence predators. We don't just hunt until we're tired, we hunt until the prey is tired. We don't just fight until we're hurt, we fight until the problem is solved. She held up a small device that looked suspiciously like a grenade. This is a concussion charge, non-lethal, but it will definitely get someone's attention. I've got 12 of them. 12? Crom's mandibles were clicking so rapidly they sounded like a broken motor. I like to be thorough, Maya said simply. Also, humans have this saying, if you're going to do something, do it right the first time. I find it saves a lot of trouble later. She stood back and surveyed her work. In the space of 30 minutes, she had transformed the fabrication bay into what looked like a military armory. Railguns, mining charges, concussion grenades, and several other devices that the crew couldn't identify but suspected they probably didn't want to. Right then, Maya said, clapping her hands together. I think we're ready to go introduce ourselves to Draktor the Merciless. Fair warning, everyone. Humans have a tendency to get creative when we're having fun, and I have to say this is shaping up to be quite entertaining. The crew exchanged glances that clearly communicated a single, shared thought. What exactly had they been sharing their ship with for the past 6 months? Maya Rodriguez stood in the shuttle bay, wearing a maintenance suit that she'd modified with about 30 pounds of improvised weaponry, looking like the universe's most cheerful harbinger of doom. The crew of the Prosperity's Edge watched her final preparations with the kind of fascination usually reserved for watching natural disasters unfold. Right then, Maya said, checking the seals on her helmet one last time. I'm going to take Maintenance Pod 7 and dock with the Golden Horizon. Should be about 20 minutes to get through their security and reach the passengers. Captain Vortex frills were doing a nervous dance around his neck. You are going alone, into ship full of dangerous pirates? Oh, I'm not going into a ship full of dangerous pirates, Maya replied with that unsettling smile. I'm going into a ship full of targets. There's a difference. She climbed into the maintenance pod, which she'd somehow managed to armor with spare hull plating and outfit with what appeared to be a small arsenal. The crew watched through the bay's observation windows as she ran through her pre-flight checklist, with the kind of methodical precision that suggested she'd done this sort of thing before. Patching you through to the ship's comm system, Blue F announced, his tentacles trembling as he worked his console. You'll have full audio and video feed. Lovely, Maya said, and her voice carried that same conversational tone that had started making the crew nervous. Feel free to watch and learn. This should be educational. The maintenance pod launched from the Prosperity's Edge and immediately began what could only be described as the most aggressive docking maneuver in the history of space travel. Maya didn't approach the Golden Horizon cautiously or try to find a safe entry point. Instead, she accelerated directly toward the luxury liner's docking bay, at a speed that made Crom's remaining legs click anxiously against the deck. Is she going to crash? Vortak asked. No. Maya's voice came through the comm with disturbing calm. I'm going to make an entrance. The maintenance pod slammed into the Golden Horizon's docking bay with enough force to buckle the doors, and Maya was out of the pod before the debris stopped flying. The crew watched through her helmet cam as she moved through the ship's corridors with fluid, predatory grace. Thermal imaging shows 23 pirates between me and the passenger deck, Maya reported conversationally. They're using a standard ship clearing formation, very textbook. The first group of pirates rounded the corner expecting to find a terrified rescue worker. Instead, they found Maya Rodriguez, who had apparently decided that the best way to deal with armed criminals was to treat them like a particularly challenging engineering problem. Hello, boys, Maya said pleasantly, and then things got educational very quickly. Maya moved through the ship's corridors like she was solving a three-dimensional puzzle, and the pirates were just obstacles to be removed with the appropriate tools. She used the ship's own systems against them, venting atmosphere in strategic locations, overloading power grids to create electrical hazards, and generally turning the luxury liner into a maze of creative death traps. The thing about ship-to-ship combat, Maya explained calmly while remotely sealing blast doors to trap a group of pirates in a section she'd just filled with knockout gas, is that most people think about it like a firefight, but it's really more like three-dimensional chess. You have to think about positioning, resource management, and environmental factors. She reached the passenger deck in 12 minutes, having neutralized 17 pirates without firing a single shot. The crew of the Prosperity's Edge watched in stunned silence as Maya calmly opened the emergency blast doors and began herding terrified passengers toward the escape pods. "Everyone stay calm," Maya announced to the passengers, her voice switching to the kind of reassuring tone usually reserved for customer service. "I'm Maya Rodriguez from the cargo vessel Prosperity's Edge. We're here to help. Please form an orderly line and follow the illuminated path to the escape pods." "Are you alone?" one passenger asked, a well-dressed alien who looked like he'd been having a very bad day. "Oh, absolutely," Maya replied cheerfully. "But don't worry, I've got everything under control." That was when Draktor the Merciless made his appearance. The pirate captain was impressive, in the way that apex predators are impressive. 8 feet tall, covered in natural armor plating, with 4 arms that ended in claws designed for ripping things apart. He'd earned his reputation by being personally responsible for the deaths of over 300 people, and he moved with the kind of confidence that comes from never having met anything more dangerous than himself. "Here," he snarled, his voice carrying the kind of authority that made lesser species wet themselves. "You will surrender, now, or I will make your death very slow and very painful." Maya looked up at him with interest, like she was examining a particularly fascinating piece of broken machinery. "Oh, you must be Draktor. I've heard so much about you." "You know who I am." Draktor seemed pleased by this. "Good. Then you know that resistance is futile." "I know that you're wanted by 17 different governments for crimes against sentient life," Maya said conversationally. "I know that you've killed over 300 people, and I know that you think you're the most dangerous thing in this sector of space." She smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made the passengers behind her take an involuntary step backward. "The thing is, Draktor, I'm from Earth, and on Earth we have a saying, everyone's a tough guy until they meet a tougher guy. What happened next lasted approximately 30 seconds, and would be talked about in pirate circles for the next 50 years. Maya Rodriguez, all 4 feet 11 inches of her, turned Draktor the Merciless into Draktor the Whimpering, with a combination of improvised weapons, environmental hazards, and what could only be described as weaponized physics. When the dust settled, Draktor was unconscious, tied up with his own belt, and Maya was calmly finishing the passenger evacuation as if nothing had happened. "That's everyone," Maya announced over the comm. "Passengers are secure, pirates are neutralized, and I've got the ship's captain ready for transport. Oh, and I found the cargo manifests. Looks like there's about 12 million credits worth of merchandise in the hold." Captain Vortak's voice came through the comm, sounding slightly strangled. "You defeated entire pirate crew, by yourself?" "Well, I had help," Maya replied modestly. "The ship's environmental systems were very cooperative, and the pirates were kind enough to position themselves in tactically disadvantageous locations. Really, it was more like a team effort." As the maintenance pod docked with the Prosperity's Edge, Maya's voice came through the comm one more time, cheerful and conversational as always. "Oh, and Captain, I think we might want to discuss my job responsibilities when I get back. I'm starting to think that waste recycling might not be the best use of my particular skill set." The docking bay of the Prosperity's Edge had never been so quiet. Maya Rodriguez climbed out of the maintenance pod with the same casual demeanor she'd had when she left, except now she was dragging an unconscious pirate captain behind her like a particularly large piece of luggage. The crew stood in a semicircle, maintaining what they clearly considered a respectful distance from what they now realized was the most dangerous creature on the ship. "Right then," Maya said, pulling off her helmet and shaking out her hair. "That was fun. Haven't had a good puzzle like that in months. Really gets the blood flowing, you know." Captain Vortak's frills were doing something that looked like a cross between a nervous twitch and a salute. "Maya, that is to say..." He paused, clearly struggling with concepts that his brain wasn't quite ready to process. "You defeated 15 pirate ships." "Technically, I defeated 1 pirate ship," Maya corrected, stepping over Draktor's unconscious form. "The other 14 are still out there, but they're having what you might call a crisis of confidence. Amazing how quickly word spreads when someone's reputation gets thoroughly debunked." She gestured toward the view screen, where the remaining pirate vessels were indeed in full retreat, their formation completely broken. Turns out that when you remove the head of the snake, the body tends to get confused about what it's supposed to be doing. Bloom's tentacles had gone completely rigid. You? You single-handedly dismantled an entire pirate operation. Oh, I wouldn't say single-handedly, Maya replied modestly. Draktor helped quite a bit, really. Very cooperative once we established the new hierarchy, although I have to say, for someone called the Merciless, he certainly did a lot of pleading toward the end. She walked over to the nearest wall panel and began entering commands with the kind of casual efficiency that now made the crew's skin crawl. I've transferred the Golden Horizon's passenger manifest to our systems, along with the cargo inventory. Should be quite a nice reward from the insurance companies. Oh, and I've also uploaded the complete tactical database from Draktor's ship. Intelligence agencies pay very well for that sort of information. Captain Vortak was staring at her with the kind of expression usually reserved for natural phenomena. Maya, what exactly are humans? Maya paused in her work and looked up at him with that patient smile that the crew now realized was probably her version of baring her teeth. Well, Captain, that's a very good question. Humans are what you get when you take a species of persistence predators, give them opposable thumbs and pattern recognition, and then spend about 10,000 years teaching them increasingly creative ways to solve problems. She turned back to her console. The thing about humans is that we're what evolutionary biologists call generalist survivors. We don't have claws or armor or natural weapons. What we have is adaptability, creativity, and a disturbing tendency to treat existential threats as intellectual challenges. Crom's mandibles clicked weakly. But you were fixing waste recyclers. I was fixing waste recyclers, Maya agreed. Because I like fixing things. It's relaxing. But just because I prefer fixing things doesn't mean I've forgotten how to break them. It's all about applying the right tool for the right job. She finished her work and turned to face the crew, who immediately took what they probably thought was a subtle step backward. Which brings us to the question of my job responsibilities going forward. Captain Vortak's frills flattened completely against his neck. You want promotion? Well, I was thinking more along the lines of an expanded role, Maya said cheerfully. Chief of Security seems like it might be a better fit for my skill set. No offense, Crom. Crom's response was a sound that might have been laughter, or might have been the noise a species makes when it's having an existential crisis. None taken. Please, take job. I insist. Lovely, Maya said, and her smile was genuinely warm now. I think we're going to work very well together. Oh, and don't worry about the weapons I fabricated. I've uploaded all the manufacturing specifications to the ship's database. Just in case we run into any more puzzles that need solving. She started walking toward the exit, stepping over Draktor's unconscious form with the kind of casual grace that suggested she did this sort of thing regularly. I'll be in the fabrication bay if anyone needs me. I want to design some defensive systems for the ship. Nothing too elaborate, just a few modifications to make sure we don't have any more unwanted visitors. The crew watched her leave in stunned silence, and it wasn't until the door closed behind her that anyone spoke. Did she just say she was going to design defensive systems? Blumf whispered. Did she say that was the fun part? Vortak added weakly. Crom made that sound again. Did anyone else notice that she called what just happened a puzzle? They stood in the docking bay, looking at the unconscious pirate captain and the scattered debris from Maya's entrance, each lost in their own thoughts about what exactly they'd been sharing their ship with for the past 6 months. Finally, Captain Vortak spoke up. Perhaps we should update Maya's personnel file. What should we put? Blumhoff asked. Vortak's frills did a slow, thoughtful flutter. Species human. Occupation, Chief of Security. Special notes. Do not anger. Do not underestimate. Do not assign to waste recycling duty. Should we add anything else? Crom asked. They looked at each other, then at the door through which Maya had disappeared, then at the unconscious pirate captain, who had learned the hard way that size isn't everything. Yes, Vortak said finally. Note that she mentions she's the boring one in her family. The crew exchanged glances, and for the first time since Maya had joined their ship, they all had the same thought. What exactly were humans like when they weren't being boring? In the fabrication bay, Maya Rodriguez was humming that same old Earth song about the danger zone while she designed defensive systems that would make most military engineers weep with envy. Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance, unaware that somewhere in the vast emptiness of space, the universe had just learned an important lesson about the dangers of underestimating small, cheerful creatures who like to fix things. And somewhere in the ship's database, a new entry was being recorded. Human, small, friendly, excellent at problem solving, approach with caution, and unlimited respect. After all, you never know when the waste recycling unit might need fixing again.